Good evening. So I'm hoping this volume will be good. I just recorded a whole video and the volume was not good again. So let's see here. This evening I would like to read to you some words from a brother named Don Rutledge, who was an elder in the church in Dallas for years. And I'll just let his words speak for themselves. I will say that I apologize if I seem to jump around a little bit in topics, but when I come across something that is just helpful for clarification and corroboration of testimonies, then I just feel to share them with all of us. If they're helpful to me, then maybe they'll be helpful to somebody else. Okay, so Don Rutledge, there are actually 3 different statements that I will read from tonight. Don Rutledge on Daystar. My first conversation regarding Daystar occurred in the Magnolia House in LA around 1970 to 71 summertime. And we still have the Magnolia House near USC to this day. Very beautiful house. We being believers in Christ, the church in Los Angeles. Okay. Frank DeLuna's wife had inherited some money. He was looking to start a business. He and Tim Lee, that Timothy Lee is Witness Lee's son, who is known to have raped women, abused wives, etc. Okay. He and Tim Lee had come up with the idea of selling expensive, exclusive motorhomes. They were in the very early stages. I was in sales and very interested in running my own business. I was curious as to what I could learn. Frank and I spoke for about an hour on the porch. A few days later, I happened to be in a group conversation with Witness Lee. The conversation went to spreading of the local churches and the need for some of the brothers to serve full time, and the need for funds to acquire adequate property. Since we were primarily a very young group, there was little surplus for any projects. Witness Lee mentioned the business that Tim and Frank were starting. He felt it matched us. Whatever that meant, I am not sure, but those were his words. He then went on to share how he believed that the best way was to build the coach ourselves. He believed they could be manufactured in Taiwan, which would provide jobs for the saints and resources for the Lord's work in the Far East. Then they could be sold to wealthy Americans, and by eliminating other entities, that is, keeping everything within the circle of the local churches, a substantial profit could be made on each unit. He went on to add that saints in the USA and Taiwan and Manila could invest for their own profit and provide a source of revenue for the Lord's work. He wanted to dedicate 35% of the profit for the work. 35% of the profit would go to the investors, and I do not recall exactly what was to happen to the final 30%. Perhaps it was to go to the work in the Far East, but actually, I'm thinking as I've read this now for the 3rd or 4th time, maybe that was for the company owners, Timothy and Frank, anyway, because they were trying to start a business. Okay. The project moved very quickly from there. Within about 3 years, a factory had been built in Taiwan, and a facility for finishing the coaches had been acquired and put into operation in Orange County. The only problem was there were no buyers, and we were in the midst of the oil embargo. The project did not last very long. I was very close to Bob Bynum, who sold the coaches in the Southwest. I knew it was a real losing boondoggle. I was with him quite a bit as he evaluated the product and market. Very bleak. Max Rappaport became the president and quit his job to run Daystar. He told me that if there is a market for the Daystar, it is sitting on the head of a pin, P-I-N. Okay. About this time, I was in a conversation with James Barber. James was very enthusiastic about the whole venture and had invested in the business. I told him my opinion and how hopeless it appeared to me. His response was that even if I was correct, Witness Lee was God's man for today, and the Lord would bless it anyway. I was in more than one conversation where some brother expressed this superstition. In my opinion, it was something that got way out of hand and took on a life of its own. People were extremely enthusiastic and optimistic about the project. Witness Lee did not have to do much to persuade the saints to invest. Every pitch I ever heard was offline from a regular meeting, church meeting that is, and whoever was directing the meeting was very careful to give a disclaimer at the beginning that the Daystar business was a business and not a part of the church, but that it was owned and run exclusively by brothers and sisters in the local churches. Quality of the Daystar unit. It had pluses and minuses. It was designed by an elderly gentleman who had designed the original Coke delivery trucks. Many in the RV community did not like the design and believed it did not match the time. The interior was spectacular. Marble countertops, teak wood, soft Cadillac leather. The body was core 10 steel. This made it safer than a tank, but also put it at the limit of weight. The problem was that paint did not bond well to the shell. Several of the units began to shed paint. I saw one in Austin. It had been sold, but it looked like a mangy dog. The main problem was the price. They had originally been priced at around $60,000, a handsome sum in 1973 to 74. Eventually, I believe the units that sold for around $30,000. There were a dozen or so shells at the plant in Orange County which were never finished out and were sold for the steel. No one was the same after Daystar. Witness Lee had said the recovery lost its virginity. At least there was a loss of the Lord's presence, and the glow that had been with many began to fade. The simplicity and purity was gone. Living Stream Ministry became a business. Fees were charged for conferences. Some who served full-time began to receive a salary. Churches, elders, and saints began to be evaluated based on their, quote, usefulness. The push for, quote, good material began. We had a call for the gospel song that had a line that went, to the beaches, to the parks, or wherever we may. This song ceased to be sung. The highways and byways were replaced with, go to the campuses and bring in the good material. Southern California was never the same in spite of great effort to recapture the era of blessing and glory. Okay, now he shares about Linko, which I had forgotten about, but there was this huge push and rallies, basically like cheerleading type rallies with songs about Linko and everything. Go, 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 Linko. Encouraging all of us to give everything we can for this property in Taipei or in the Taiwan area. And there were drawings and I think even 3D models of like immaculate buildings and how it would be a training center, but it'd also have a lot of offices and businesses and make a lot of money. Okay. Linko was something that the office, Philip Lee, came up with. It was presented as an example of the wonderful God-ordained leadership of the recovery. After a lot of money was raised and spent on the property and many plans made and a great hubbub made, the brilliant office learned that the land had not been approved for development and was basically useless. I never supported this project, and the young BBs, I think that's Blended Brothers, promoted it as a means to humble the elders. Minoru gave a stirring speech at an elders and coworkers meeting about how the elders would be blessed if they went to Linko and shoveled dirt. He promised that the Spirit would enliven you as you shoveled dirt, and they would be greatly rewarded spiritually if they gave up being an elder and went to Linko to shovel dirt. Just another boondoggle, just another ridiculous project proposed by the office and the deputy authority. How things had changed. Yet the Daystar fiasco was the beginning in the USA of one scheme after another, which was divinely judged. We were very much like the nation of Israel. We had great victories and huge failures. Solomon built the temple, and then his immorality and projects caused the nation to be divided. The Bible is faithful to record both the victories and blessings and the defeats and failures. I recall a conversation with Witness Lee regarding the American character and his failure to take this factor into consideration. Witness Lee told me that he had learned that Americans are susceptible to hero worship. They do not critically consider what their leaders may propose. He believed that some of his wrongheaded ideas had gotten support due to this flaw in the American character and that he needed to be careful not to take advantage of this weakness. yet we know he repeatedly took advantage of this American characteristic. I would assume that every church handled these matters in their own way. In Dallas, we never presented Daystar to my knowledge, even though there was a lot of talk as a brother attempted to sell them to the public, and sometimes one was parked in our parking lot. After a meeting, we permitted Brother Chang to present his vitamin business. I bought some. Also, we were contacted about a savings program that the LSM was sponsoring to encourage the young people to save their surplus. It was called the Little Bankers. An elder in a church would collect and record additions and interest to someone's account. I was asked to take care of the Dallas Saints. I had a meeting with some of the young people, and a few put in a few dollars. Unfortunately, I put $500 into an account for myself. We all thought we could just withdraw at any time. Then I learned the money went for a last-ditch effort to keep Daystar afloat. Say goodbye to it. Later, Witness Lee asked me to sign a waiver of forgiveness from the Living Stream Ministry. Silly me. I signed the release and kissed the money goodbye. Compared to what many lost in Daystar, etc., my little bit was something to just forget about. I never mentioned Linko in Dallas, but it was a big deal in Irving, complete with models of the buildings to be built, etc. Because the church in Dallas would not join in the cheerleading and fundraising from Irving, there was more and more a strained relationship. Dallas did give money for Irving, and the goal and purpose for the facility was shared. Benson came over a time or two and did some fundraising for that hall, the Irving Meeting Hall, after a Lord's table. Usually, Dallas had a sizable surplus in our bank accounts. On 3 occasions in Texas area elders meetings, Benson and Ray put a press on Dallas to release our extra funds for Irving and Living Stream Ministry. We said no each time, as our conscience did not agree that the money had been given by the saints for questionable projects. This put quite a strain on our relationship. It was reported by Larry Chi, a former elder in Taipei, that not even they knew what happened to the money donated into the millions to the Linko project. But they knew that Philip Lee was in charge of all monies, including Linko donations, received in both the LSM office in Taipei and the one in Anaheim. Okay. Then another testimony, a written testimony of Don Rutledge. Don Rutledge, former Dallas elder, explains, the turn away from the vision by Witness Lee regarding the practice of the local church life began in January 1974 at the very first Special Elders and Coworkers Conference. This is when the concept of the work began. Few of the saints realized the magnitude of effect this meeting had on the churches. With charts and statistics, Witness Lee and Max Rappaport came forth to launch the movement. It was boldly declared that the churches would use Witness Lee as the exclusive source of teaching, and Max would serve as the coordinator to bring the various churches with their elders into a unified movement. The life study messages would be given in Anaheim, and ministry stations were set up in various cities to repeat the messages through designated brothers. Some smaller churches consolidated to the larger localities where there was a ministry station. The official list of the 12 designated brothers who would be speaking in the conferences was announced. Biannual trainings began. The messages became life studies. From that time on, the individual churches would be called to account if they were moving independently. In addition to coordinating the elders to act in a single direction, Max was charged to assist the various churches to be more effective in gospel preaching and outreach. He began to travel, and in particular to meet with the elders. Those who would not be good movement men were pushed aside if possible or moved somewhere to be out of the way. On several occasions, Max told me that he was working to bring the elders and churches into one coordination for the purpose of carrying out the burden of Witness Lee. He told me several times that only he could put it all together. I am not attempting to call into question the motive of Witness Lee or Max. During this time, Witness Lee did some very good teaching and Max did some very good gospel work. But what did happen was that the nature of the various local churches changed from being local in administration and spontaneous in actions to being directed from a center with clear administrative leaders and directors. Things were definitely not the same. Some were saying the time of blessing has passed. We changed our vision, or the moving of the Spirit left the churches, or teaching doctrine and methods replaced life. That is Don Rutledge's account from about how things changed from January 1974. Okay, one more account from Don Rutledge. Don Rutledge with Brother Lee, 1975. One evening, this is Don Rutledge speaking. One evening, I was walking with Brother Lee. He stopped, turned to me, then put his arm around my shoulder. I realized he was about to tell me something very serious. He told me that he had made a terrible mistake with Daystar, the luxury motorhome business he introduced to the churches that failed the year before. He said that if he saw Brother Nee, he would not know what to say, since Brother Nee had warned him not to mix the church with financial matters or business. He then told me that he had once told Watchman Nee that he was not following him, but rather was following the truth and vision that Brother Nee taught. Furthermore, that he would not follow Watchman Nee if Watchman Nee left the vision, but that he, Brother Lee, would continue to follow the vision. He then looked me straight in the eye and charged me, "Brother Don, if I leave the vision, do not follow me, but follow the vision." I was a little speechless, but I did manage to return the embrace and assure Brother Lee that I would remain true to the vision and the truth. Don F. Rutledge. This has been sent in letters to coworkers. One of these accounts is in a letter to Monoro sent in 2018, and I welcome knowing if they've ever been responded to. I believe that the church does deserve to know if all these saints gave their money for Linko and then the property was never approved and there were millions of dollars collected. The money was managed by Philip Lee, and these are the exact years that he was known to be assaulting sisters sexually, including me. He was managing millions of dollars, and I would like to know, where did the money go? I will end with this statement. Brother Lee said, Witness Lee said at a conference in 1989, Witness Lee claimed at a conference on the weekend of January 27th to 29th in 1989 that he believed he had discerned the reason why some of the older elders and coworkers had some concerns regarding his work and the local churches, and he enunciated his feelings in one of the conference meetings. He spoke this is quoted. "So today, let me tell you, the problem among us is this. There is a kind of consideration among the older coworkers, not all, but some. There was a kind of consideration, where shall they be? Brother Lee was the one who brought the recovery to this country and was the one who, through the Lord's ministry, brought many of the older coworkers into the recovery. But now, this one who brought the recovery to this country is seemingly deviating. Deviating from what? Into what? That's right, deviating from the old into the new. Now some of the coworkers have to consider where they should be. Shall they remain in the old, or shall they go forth into the new? Go forth. To say this is easy. You have to pay a price, especially the older ones. They have made a success in the recovery according to the old way, but now the old way was annulled. Then what shall we do? If you were them, surely you would consider. I must tell you, this is the root of all the troubles among us today. All the other things are on the surface. The root is here. Now you know." So he's saying the root of all the troubles is not the immorality that these older brothers were asking Brother Lee to deal with. It was not the situation of control or financial corruption or anything like that. It was all that these older brothers are wondering, what about us? We had success in the old way, and we had some success in the recovery according to the old way, and now the old way is annulled. What shall we do? If you were them, surely you would consider. I must tell you, this is the root of all the troubles among us today, as if older brothers don't want to take away that is fruitful. That's not the issue. That's not the issue at all. And to me, that's extremely dishonest when you know Your son is assaulting sisters, and many of these older brothers have come to you saying this is really serious, and sisters had come to him. At least I'm thinking of Ken Unger's wife, who came with pages and pages to read, and he stopped her twice, 2 different meetings, stopped her on the first page and just changed the subject to the new way and how good it was. That's at least part of the problem. And then I'd like to echo Paul in the Bible. The love of money is a root of all evil. It's a root of all these problems. So one more thing about the mismanagement of money by the Living Stream Ministry. There is a objective organization called Ministry Watch, empowering donors to Christian ministries. Ministry Spotlight, Living Stream Ministry. It says the organization falls into the withhold giving category, and this was printed in on March 26th, 2025. It says this week, Living Stream Ministries' donor confidence score dropped 20 points. The organization now has a rating of 36. Withhold giving. And it is in the bottom 40% for financial efficiency among other ministries in the Christian growth sector. According to its website, blah, 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 blah. It gives its revenue in 2023 was $21 million. Its expenses were just $16.8 million. Its general and administrative costs were 20%, compared with its sector median of 12%. At least 8 staff members make 6-figure salaries. LSM has $112.2 million in net assets, and it is not a member of the ECFA. The organization did not respond to multiple requests for comment. So I'll post this link, but I believe that if you are the Lord's recovery, then you would have the highest standard of integrity related to financial dealings. And Don Rutledge's testimony, corroborated by many others, Don Hardy's, Paul Kerr, Bill Mallon. There are many brothers who know of the corruption. James Barber's son heard his dad toward the very end, how James Barber was so disappointed, disillusioned. Anyway, okay, I do want to sincerely, I'm not just saying this I don't have any other way to end. I want to really thank you for listening, for thinking about these matters, for commenting, for substantiating these claims if you have further information, because this corruption, when it's brought into the light, the darkness cannot overcome it. And this corruption is darkness, it's evil. And but the light overcomes the darkness. So let's keep bringing in the truth, shining the light, and through the light of life, there could be much healing. There are many dire wounds caused by these works of darkness. There are many situations among believers who identify as the Lord's recovery in which there is no fellowship with family members who are also very dear believers, but maybe who have been stumbled by these matters or who have chosen to not identify with the Lord's recovery because of corruption. But there's no fellowship between these members who were once built up together, some of them even as parents to children, spouses, situations like that, where fellowship is cut off because of these works of darkness that some will not admit. If we confess our sins, he is faithful and righteous to forgive us our sins and to cleanse us from all unrighteousness. And then we can be in the light where we have fellowship with one another. But light has no fellowship with darkness. We've got to get rid of this darkness. Many of us will keep speaking as long as we're aware of darkness in the part of the body where the Lord placed us. Much love. Thank you for listening.